Hello and welcome to another video. Well, you asked for it and I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, you gonna take it?
Because in this video, we are going to be looking at base layouts. In a more recent video of mine, I looked at building defense and that focused on building a defensive museum. This video, however, is going to focus specifically on building defensive base layouts. And the plan really is to cover sort of like the fundamentals or like key principles to what a good base layout should have. And it's worth mentioning here really that there is no such thing as a perfect base layout because, well, there's so many different attack types to defend against, you can't defend against them all. But I have got some very nice base layouts that I'm going to share with you.
Yeah, boy.
Whilst I get into the nitty-gritty of good base layouts, and you may decide to copy some of these base layouts, and I will say that they are all automation age. However, if you're lower age than that, then they're easily adaptable to the age that you will be in, and hopefully by me covering these key principles, you can sort of adapt and make your base hopefully strong and mighty by following those principles. So, if that sounds like something that you would like,
I like it a lot.
then I would like it if you would like the video at this point, please. Thank you. So, let's get into it and let's look at one of our first bases. And it's worth me mentioning that the bases we're going to be looking at are from one of the sort of top alliances that sort of have been in the game, and therefore the bases are also from some of these sort of top defensive players in the game. And getting straight into it here, one of the first key principles that I want to discuss with you is making sure that you protect your key defensive structures. And what do I mean by that? I mean your missile silo, your command post, and your stronghold. Having those well protected is essential for your base to survive an attacker, essentially, because if those things go down, then it's one less thing that the attacking troops have to worry about. So by making sure your missile silo is pretty central in the base, it's going to make it very hard for attackers to get rid of it. Your command post, again as well, you want to keep that alive and have that central and well protected, because as soon as your command post goes down, well, your drones, your defensive drones, aren't going to do anything. And by having your stronghold central as well, that's just going to mean that any troops in there that spawn on defense are going to be, again, just sort of more well protected whilst they come out and attack the attacker's troops. Yes, that makes sense. Also, at this point, and this is a good base layout to sort of mention this point, is that if you're using a forbidden city, and I would assume that if you're going defense that you would be, it's worth making sure that your forbidden city and your town centre are fairly spread out and not too close, because otherwise, well, putting them close together sort of defeats the whole object of having those two separate buildings doing the same job. So that's the first thing, is making sure you've got those key buildings safe somewhere in the center, I would say, of your base, so they're not easy to destroy. Whilst we're talking about the placement of buildings, then this is another good base layout to sort of mention this, and that is the placement of your towers. Now then, when I talk about towers, there's lots of different types of towers, but the towers I want to mention first, and this is a good layout for that is the mortar towers to begin with. You'll notice here that every mortar tower on this base is within range of any of the sides that an attacker might place their troops on. So if I was going to attack this base myself, I would probably attack somewhere from up here or here, and both of those sides are protected by a mortar. Now, that's not the end of the world, however, it does just mean that any attacker has got to be on their A game when they are deploying their troops, because those mortars are going to be attacking them straight away. So that's one of the towers that's worth mentioning about the placement, and using those to basically be in range of sort of where troops are going to be deployed is one of the best sort of ways to place those towers. Right, let's have a look at another base layout and look at some other things that are worth considering. So, as we're on tower placement, let's talk about air defense and submachine gun towers, because those two towers, your air defense and submachine guns, they sort of go hand in hand, really. They are like your key, well, I mean, it's sort of in the name, isn't it? Air defense. They're your key defense against planes, transports, recons, bombers, all those sorts of things. So having those strategically placed in the sort of flight paths that those planes are going to take is really, really important to consider. So what you'll often see is that air defenses are coupled with submachine guns. So submachine guns often get placed near air defense, and that is because any plane or bomber or fighter, or I'm just going to class all of these things as planes to make life easy, any plane that is attacked by a submachine gun will have its attack suppressed, i.e. damage reduced, which means that that is going to then mean it will do less damage against any air defense or things around that. And as an attacker, one of the things you want to do first when you're attacking a base is remove the air defense so that your planes can do the most damage and have the most impact on taking that base out. So as a defender, or when considering, your base layout, ensuring that you've got submachine guns close to your air defense is important, because it will keep them alive for longer. It's also important in terms of sort of, whilst we're on this topic talking about air defense and submachine guns, and I sort of mentioned it just now, is making sure that they are placed on the flight path to key buildings. So if I was gonna, target a plane or a transport or a bomber or a fighter to go to the command post here, then it's more than likely going to come in from over this side. It's more than likely going to come from over here and fly straight along over here, but along that flight path we've got air defense and submachine guns. So consider the flight path that planes will take when attacking your base, and ensure that you have air defense and submachine guns along those flight paths, and make sure that your air defense and submachine guns are coupled together nicely. So that is the tower placement for now that I'm going to discuss. Let's have a look at another base layout then, because yes, the next thing I want to discuss is like compartmentalizing your base. So that means essentially having your base in like walled off sections, and taking that one step further, using your walls to basically like but to guide the attacking troops into places where an attacker wouldn't necessarily want them to go, or take the attacking troops along paths that aren't ideal. So this base layout here, for example, we can see is split up nicely into lots of different compartments. Everything has got its own little section where the walls are closed off, and what this just means is that any troops going through this base will have to destroy walls to get through. But not only that, what we want to consider here is also, like around the edges here, is that some of the compartments aren't actually like closed off. So we've got a compartment here that's quite open, and what that means is that any troops that are going to like attack like the buildings within this compartment, they can't then just like walk through the wall. They're not going to attack it and make a hole. They have to then walk all the way around it, meaning that their pathing is going to be, suboptimal. There's another example of that here, where there is a wall placed here, meaning that any troops attacking like these buildings here, then are going to have to walk all the way around there to then start attacking the next one. So that's another thing to consider, is your wall placement and how they are spaced out to ensure that any attacking troops just have to like basically, it makes it awkward for them to get through the base. So let's have a look at another base layout, because I want to talk about bastions. Bastions are, for an attacker, just a bloody pain in the arse. Like, they slow down your troops, and they can really bring an attack to an absolute halt. Having bastions placed at strategic places is like really important to consider, and this base, I believe, is a good example of that, because it showcases several things. This bastion here, for example, is placed in the like the center part of several compartments. So we've got this compartment of the base here, this compartment here, this compartment here, this compartment here, all with this bastion placed sort of in the center of those compartments, meaning that if this bastion is destroyed, any troops that want to move between those compartments will have to walk over that destroyed bastion, and they'll be slowed down and they're going to have a bad time. Let's see if there's another example of that on this base as well. So yeah, here we go. These bastions are placed right by the Forbidden City, and as an attacker, that is a building you're going to want to target. However, by targeting or maybe attacking from the side to get this Forbidden City, it's inevitable that you're going to kill these bastions, and then your troops are going to have to walk through that area, again slowing them down beyond belief. So bastion placement is important to consider, and having them near key buildings or sort of separating those compartments to your base is really important to consider. So we've talked about key defensive structures, where we want to put those. We've talked about tower placement. We've also talked about like compartmentalizing your base and like the placement of bastions. The next thing to consider then is like your defender spawning buildings and where you're going to place those. And this base layout here is a very nice layout to showcase that. So you'll notice in most bases that the Acropolis is going to be within range of a lot of the defender spawning buildings because, well, yes, because it speeds up those defensive spawning buildings and makes the defenders come out quicker. And ensuring that your Acropolis has got plenty of your defensive buildings within that range, predominantly your bunkers, stables, that's something you want to prioritize. Garrisons, not so much of a priority. You can see on here, this base here, the garrisons are sort of around the outside, but having those tank depots and bunkers all within range of that Acropolis to get that increased defender spawn time is a priority you should have. What I also like about this base is the fact that this little bit in the middle here, right, where the walls sort of go like this, what that is going to mean is that defenders in this base are going to, well, defenders can walk through gates, but it also means they're essentially going to funnel to this area here because they have to walk through this bit to get out of the base or to get to the attacking troops. And that just means that all of the defenders are going to be close together, which means that attacking troops are just going to get held up forever, killing those defenders. So thinking about where your defensive buildings are placed and the route that your defenders are going to take is important to consider as well. And that again sort of comes down to how you're going to compartmentalize your base and where you may have gaps or gates in your base to funnel those defenders. Okay, another base we want to have a look at then. And, oh, where has he gone? Oh no, I think those are all the ones I want to showcase, in which case then I've still got a few things I want to talk about, and the next one is trap placement, and I haven't talked about that yet because, well, in these screenshots you can't see the traps, but all of these I can guarantee when I was thinking about how to talk about this, I thought basically I can't show you it, I'm going to just have to explain it. Traps, you want them spread out. You don't want them all clumped up. And the reason for that is because any attacker is going to have the sat scan tactic. And that means that, well, that essentially means they can take out a lot of your traps. If you spread them out though, that means that the sat scan is not going to be effective. Now, different attackers will always sort of have different preferences of where they like to sat scan. A lot of the time, people like to sat scan areas like near the town centre or near the missile silo. Personally, I like to sat scan close to where I'm going to deploy my troops, so maybe like near the edge of the base. Either way though, having your traps spread out as much as possible is the best way to minimize them being essentially completely nullified by a good sat scan. I talked earlier on about tower placement, and when I talked about that, I talked about air defense, and I can't really talk about traps and air defense without talking about CGIs and SAMs as well. So CGIs, they can't be disabled by sat scans, but they can be triggered by drones, and sometimes drones will be used by fighter or bomber attackers to take out your CGIs. So thinking about the placement of your CGIs, you're going to want to have them again on sort of the flight paths that planes will take when attacking top defensive buildings, such as your missile silo, command post, and things like that. So having your CGIs along those flight paths, along with those SAM batteries, something to consider. Let's have a look. What else did I want to... I've gone old school. I've got a piece of paper here that I've written down all the things I wanted to sort of discuss. Talked about troops, SAMs and CGIs. Sorry, traps, SAMs and CGIs. Talked about attacker pathing. Compartmentalizing bases. You know what? I think I've talked about everything I want to talk about. So I'll quickly run through these bases one last time if you want to see them. This one here is a personal favorite of mine because I did use it on another account that I had the pleasure of sort of looking after for a while, and it was a defensive account, and this base did very, very well because of all of the reasons I've sort of discussed really. We've got, key buildings in the middle, kept safe. We've got lots of different compartments, meaning that troops are going to have to go through those different compartments. We've got lovely placement of bastions, meaning that troops are going to get slowed down on those key pathways through the base. We've got the Acropolis down here, which has got plenty of bunkers and defensive buildings sort of within its range, and it's nice and sort of like just everything's just spread out, and the placement for the attacker, like around the sides, when they deploy their troops, they're just going to have a bad time because they've got mortars protecting all those areas. So this base layout, I really like this one. If you're going to copy one, I would personally take this one because I really liked it. However, all of these ones, like as I've said, these are base layouts from top defensive players in the game. So if you're looking for a nice layout, maybe consider one of these. Consider some of the things I've discussed about in this video with keeping those buildings safe, placement of your towers, thinking about where your air defense and your submachine guns are placed close together, compartmentalizing your base, placement of those bastions in those, just making it really fucking hard for defenders to get through, essentially, not defenders, for attackers to get through, having those bastions sort of like I sort of said earlier on. But here's another example where you've got those intersections of the walls, place those bastions, you're going to get the best bang for your buck there. And then traps and SAMs and CGIs, just have them nice and spread out so that they can't be all disabled by a SAT scan. And I think I've talked for long enough. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you found some of this useful, and some of the information I've shared will be of value to you and will help you make a nice defensive base. Thank you for watching the video. If you would like to see more of my content, then please consider subscribing. Please like the video, it helps out massively. I'm going to end it there. As always, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Peace out.